Jesus is Lord. And he was such a nice Jewish boy. Jesus changed my life. And he's still in the life-changing business.
As Paul said, the love of Christ compels me.
You know, Randy, I think most people don't realize how much darkness there is in the world.
It can't be just coming to church and getting pumped up with a faith. You and I are all going to have something of faith in us.
Jesus died to save sinners, and you are a sinner.
I'm gonna start by reading you some quotes because I want to make sure I have your attention. And if you know who said these quotes, don't say anything, okay? First are some quotes about animals. When the eagles are silent, the parrots begin to jabber. It's true. Look around church when pastor's not around. Success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. It's very true. I am living proof. I like that quote. It speaks to me. He said, "We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give." If you think about that, you will have to agree that it's true. He also said, "This is no time for ease and comfort. It is time to dare and endure." And he was correct, because that is the time in which we live. He said, "If you have an important point to make, don't try to be subtle or clever. Use a pile driver. Hit the point once, then come back and hit it again, then hit it a third time, a tremendous whack." Now this is going to give it away who this famous Nobel Prize-winning author was. He said, "If you're going through hell, keep going." And he said, that's right. There's not much point in stopping, is there? And on June 4th, 1940, he said, "Wars are not won by evacuation." The important point that I want to make is not from the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Winston Churchill, who said all those other things. The important point I want to make is something Jesus said in Luke 19:13. He said, "Occupy till I come." Occupy till I come. But what does that mean? The word in the New Testament, it's the only usage of that word in the entire Bible. It's used one time. Some translations suggest it's like to busy oneself with, to do business, to trade, to make profit. It's the word from which we get our English word pragmatic. We are in a war, and if you're in business, if you're a small businessman, you know we're in a war. If you're a teacher, you know we're in a war. If you're in law enforcement, you know we're in a war. If you're a pastor, you know we're in a war. And if you're a warrior, you know we're in a war. The question is, am I a victor or a victim? Webster defines occupy as to take and hold possession of as by conquest. This meaning is often associated with military operations, as in occupation forces. My father was a World War II hero. He was a member of he was a commando, a member of the Devil's Brigade. His youngest brother served in the occupation forces. The Allies and America won the war. After the war was over, occupation forces went in to occupy, to help preserve the peace, to look out for the civilians, to help a government come back into some form of an orderly, civilized manner of life. The term occupy has a military context. We're supposed to occupy till Jesus returns. Now, I think it's reasonable to say he won. He won. Jesus died to win. I ask myself, and I'm asking you, what am I willing to do? What am I willing to do to occupy till he comes? I ask this question of myself, and I'm here to challenge you to ask you, what would you attempt for God if you knew you would not fail? I'm going to repeat it, because if you change how you think, your life will be different. If you think you can't do it, if you think there's no reason for you to try, if you think it's not your job, it's not. And I feel bad for you. What would you attempt for God if you knew you would not fail? If you believed God would help you in what you were attempting to do for Him, you would only go after big things. You would pursue things that mattered. You would focus your life in such a way that you would leave a legacy. Your life will have mattered. And some of us are young, some of us are old. We're all in the exact perfect spot where we're supposed to be. And it is not too early and it is not too late to occupy. Until Jesus comes, it is our task. Until Jesus comes, we are to occupy. I'm going to go through a lot of things because Jesus said, occupy till I come. And I'm not convinced we're doing it, or at least not doing it well. And I'm here to challenge you to occupy. Jesus is coming. Look busy. Winston Churchill said, wars are not won by evacuation. I am not quitting. I'm declaring that to my family. I'm declaring that to you. I'm declaring that to myself. I am not quitting. I'm personally facing the results of the FCC spectrum auction. It's very painful. I could think of many reasons to just throw the towel in. But I'm supposed to occupy until Jesus comes. And I want to be declaring the love of God in the name of Jesus on the airwaves in this land while I have breath. Amen. So in spite of what the FCC has done, I'm not quitting. There's 120-day letters coming from T-Mobile telling me I have to close stations down. Turn them off. Silence the gospel on stations I have built and my family has helped me build. I will obey the law, but I will not quit. And with God's help, I will find other channels on which to declare the love of God and the coming of the Messiah. Yes, Lord, yes. We purchased 70 new stations, knowing that letters are already being sent out on some of those. Jesus is coming. We must announce His coming and the love of God. Because if we don't do it, who will? Hurricanes affect the things that we do. They affect other people even worse. But we cannot quit. Now, the battleground is not just here, the battleground is international. Jesus is not coming back just for Dallas. He's not coming back to Topeka or Joplin or Manhattan or Los Angeles. He's coming back to Jerusalem. But He's coming back for all who know Him and love Him. And we must announce His coming. Our task is not real complex. We don't save people. We have a declarative role. We are to publish the good news. Jesus is Lord. He loves us. He's coming back. He was victorious over sin and death. And we can simply announce to people, it's real, it's true. Prepare your hearts, turn to the Lord. The battleground is in Cuba. Some of you have gone to Cuba with us. Some of you know the work that God is doing in Cuba and the revival that is taking place in Cuba. I thank God that our Today with God project is being used in Cuban Spanish across the island nation, in seminaries, in churches. Tens of thousands of people have heard the gospel through the project that we've prepared. And this group helped us develop the curriculum. This group helped distribute the content in Cuba. Thousands of people have come to know Jesus because we are occupying. Occupy till I come is what He told us, and I will stand here and challenge you. Occupy. Be serious about the occupation. If we don't occupy, there's chaos. Occupation forces are there to not have chaos rule, but to announce the peace of God, to bring the peace of God, to live in the peace of God, to share the peace of God, to instruct in the ways of the peace of God. There are 46 pastors in Cuba right now and their families who have lost all their support. We have a call to help them. I intend to, with God's help, to help those pastors. They require so little. What we spend to go out for dinner will support a pastor and his family in Cuba for a month. Wow. $50 a month. And these men and women, they go and they tell the good news of a coming Messiah in a nation where God is not known. They are occupying until He comes. We have a great privilege before us. I will ask for your prayers. We have been asked to have our Today with God project translated into 10 languages in India. 10 languages. If we can get it translated into 10 languages, it will go out to 10,000 churches. 10,000 churches. It's what we must do if we're going to occupy.
Check out the all-new IBN television. Follow the move by tuning in as we partner with ministries like Greg Laurie and Harvest America. Serving our audience 24 hours a day, IBN broadcasts on 52 television stations around the country and on popular streaming apps like Roku, Apple TV, Android, and many others, with one purpose: to share the move of our living God with the dying world on a daily basis. IBN Television.
It's not easy to be a Christian in the land of India. Did you know they want to change the name of India to Hindustan? There's a reason for that. Compassion International had to leave India. But we must ensure that the gospel is made known across India, Pakistan, Burma, Sri Lanka, Nepal. We can do this. There are 10,000 churches waiting for the project. All we have to do is translate it and get it voiced. We can do this. My life is being redefined. I'm not wild about that. I've thought about retirement. I'm just getting started unless the Lord takes me home. I'm not saying that because I'm anybody. I'm saying that because there are some of you who are younger than me. There are some of you who are my age. There are some of you who are older. We have a call now. And we must occupy till He comes. No excuse. We must avoid the distractions that cause us to think, it's not my job. Let somebody else do it. I've done my part. Maybe we should ask God what changes He wants for us in these final days of our occupation. World War II was almost lost in June of 1940. The Allied troops of Britain, France, and Belgium were being annihilated by Hitler's Nazi force. Annihilated. They were doomed. Dunkirk. Many of you may have seen the film. Others of you know the story. You should know the story. Dunkirk, a harbor in northern France, 68,000 Allied troops were slaughtered. 68,000. But it would have been 400,000. 400,000 would have died. But the miracle of Dunkirk, it was a bloody 8-day evacuation where 338,226 Allied troops were saved, and Christian Europe was spared. It's the greatest military evacuation in human history. And Europe, the war would have been lost were it not for that event. How did that happen? There were a total of 933 ships brought across the English Channel, of which 700 were small civilian vessels. One of them was as little as 14 feet. It's in a museum in England. The call went out to the nation. Our troops are dying. There is no escape unless we can bring them across the channel. 933 ships. Many of them were lost. There were German submarines. The Nazi Air Force was destroying anything and everything in its path. Their troops were coming and they were at the harbor, at the water. There was no place for them to go. They were trapped. But the call went out. We need your help. People went in fishing boats, in yachts, on paddle steamers, in lifeboats, on pleasure craft. They crossed the English Channel, loaded up their ships, and brought them out to where there were larger ships that could take them. They took everyone they could, and they brought them back across the channel. 338,000 souls were spared. And instead of the Allied forces being wiped out, they lived to fight another day. Civilians were asked to volunteer. It's a tremendous story. We know about the heroes. Would we have answered the call? Would I have answered the call? I don't know. I'm glad I don't have to answer that question. 700 people like you and me. 700 cooperated. How many refused? How many people said, I'm too old, I'm too weak, I'm too sick, I'm too scared, it's too risky, I'm too poor? How many of them said, no, you can't use my fishing boat, I need to keep fishing, it's how I make a living? How many of them said, I'm a shopkeeper, not a warrior? How many of them said, it's not my job? I'm talking to you. Jesus said, occupy till I come. When someone doesn't want to do something, one excuse is as good as another. I'll tell you what I tell my kids. I don't care about your petty problems. I'm in the ministry. The distance between Dunkirk and the White Cliffs of Dover in England is between 43 and 97 miles, depending on the route that the ships took. And that was an important issue. It was dangerous. The English Channel was mined. There were submarines. There were shoreline artillery, batteries of... It was bad. They were picking people off and sinking ships left and right. It was a dangerous journey. The 700 who volunteered their ships or themselves, they were incredible. Incredible. And it saved the day. There were many heroes, but I want to ask how many refused. How did they feel after? I put myself there and I say, I don't know. I don't know. You got to make a living, got to feed my family. I need my boat to fish. If I let you use it to... They're shooting over there. They're dropping bombs. I hear them where I'm at. How am I going to feed my kids? Of the ones who went, how many wanted to turn back after sailing into enemy fire? How many saw boats sinking and wanted to quit? These are real questions, and I don't know the answers. Some volunteers probably knew. I want you to think about this. You're 43 miles away in England, knowing there's 400,000 troops going to be wiped out across the channel. The government says, I need your help. How many of those people knew some of the soldiers that were trapped across the channel, 43 miles away? How many of them, it was their son who was serving right across the channel? How many grandsons? How many husbands, fathers, friends? How many people were motivated to give their boat or get in their boat and go because it made a difference to them personally? How many of them understood that if Hitler prevailed at Dunkirk, it would have been the end of England anyway? The results of not going would have meant their enslavement and defeat. There was a personal impact, and it was inevitable. How many people who were heroes because they were motivated by these other factors? I don't know. I have no idea. But it had to be. They had to be there. They had to. It's a small world, like they say. What if the situation was different? That's what I want to challenge you with. What if, put yourself in these circumstances, what if the situation was different? How many would have volunteered? What if your life would have gone on unchanged without even a glitch in your fantasy football? I'm going to get right in your home, okay? Would you have risked everything if it wasn't your son or your father or your husband or your neighbor across the channel? Would you have risked everything if their defeat didn't mean your defeat? Would you have risked everything if it cost you nothing not to, but maybe cost you everything to? I don't know. What if they knew nobody at risk personally, had no risk to themselves, didn't know the distance? It's 43 miles across the channel. But what if you were going and you didn't know how far it was? What if you hadn't made that trip a dozen times? What if you'd never been there? What if you didn't know if you had enough fuel to get there or enough fuel to get back? What if you didn't even know what the final destination was where you were being sent? What if they didn't even like the people who were in need of rescue? They weren't like you. They weren't your same color. They weren't your same religion. They weren't your same political stripe. What if they were nothing like you? What if you didn't like them because they weren't like you? What if the people in danger didn't even believe they needed to be rescued? You might be able to figure out where I'm going with this. If not, I will help you get there. What if the people you were going to rescue didn't want to be saved? Yet this is our call to a lost post-Christian society. Occupy till I come. What if the cost is just unknown and the outcome equally uncertain? Because that's what many of us face. So what? Would we still volunteer? I'm asking you. I'm asking me. If so, talk to God, then speak with one of your pastors. We are in a war. How will we respond? Will we be good stewards and occupy till he comes? Jesus is coming. Look busy. I'm not here to define your call. My own life is being redefined, but I am calling you to serve. And with that, Pastor, I'm done, and I will ask you to pray.